Imagine sitting down to a really fantastic dinner date.
Oh yeah, the best kind.
Right. So the ambiance is perfect, the conversation is flowing, and you decide to order a plate of seafood.
Sounds great so far.
It does, right? But then, a few hours later, you find out that meal was contaminated, and it triggers this incredibly violent, miserable biological defense mechanism.
Ugh, the absolute worst.
The worst. But here is where it gets crazy. Fast forward, say, 10 years. You happen to walk past a totally different seafood restaurant. You catch just the faintest whiff of that specific fish, and your stomach instantly churns.
Yeah, just immediately.
Exactly.
Right.
And you haven't made a conscious, deliberate choice to hate seafood, right? Your biology just made that choice for you a decade ago.
Which is wild when you think about it.
It really is. I mean, we walk around every single day believing we are these completely rational architects of our own lives. We think we're making autonomous decisions every second.
We really do like to give ourselves that credit.
Totally. But a massive portion of our daily routine is actually being quietly, almost invisibly programmed by the environments we inhabit.
It is a profoundly humbling realization when you look at the mechanics of it. I mean, we navigate our routines feeling like the sole directors of our own movies.
Yeah, exactly.
But more often than not, we are simply executing lines from a script written by our physical spaces, our past experiences, and especially now, our digital ecosystems.
And reading that invisible script is our mission for this deep dive. We are going to uncover the underlying architecture of human behavior. We want to see exactly how our surroundings systematically shape our habits, our emotional anxieties, and ultimately our successes.
It's a huge topic.
It is massive. And we have a phenomenal stack of sources to guide us today. We are pulling from the instructor's manual for the Cornerstone Psychology text, Discovering Psychology 2.0.
A total classic.
Right. Specifically, we're focusing on Chapter 13, which breaks down conditioning and learning. But to see how these theories operate in the real modern world, we are pairing that foundational text with a series of cutting-edge academic journals and educational reports published in just the first half of 2026.
Which I love because the combination provides a really comprehensive view.
Yeah, it bridges the gap.
Exactly. The textbook establishes the fundamental biological rules of how human beings form associations.
Right.
While these new 2026 reports demonstrate how those exact same biological rules are being leveraged right now in real time across college campuses and, within the software architecture of our smartphones.
Okay, let's unpack this because to really grasp how our environments dictate our behavior, we have to start at the absolute baseline.
Right, the ground floor.
Exactly. We have to look at our most primitive, hardwired survival responses, which brings us back to that March 2026 case study from the textbook. The one about the contaminated dinner date.
Right, yeah. That case study is just a textbook demonstration, literally, of the biology of association. It operates through classical or Pavlovian conditioning. It reveals how the brain builds an internal, involuntary physiological adjustment to a threat.
So it's not a choice.
No, not at all. When the subject sat down for that meal, the seafood was a completely neutral stimulus. I mean, it held no biological significance whatsoever.
Right, it was just food on a plate.
Exactly. However, the meal was contaminated, and that introduced an unconditioned stimulus into the equation.
Which was the sickness.
Right, the visceral physical sickness.
So because the sickness acts as this unconditioned stimulus, the brain just permanently hardwires it to the most prominent neutral stimulus in the environment, which was the seafood.
Precisely. The psychological impact of that severe physical distress just forcefully pairs the taste and smell of that specific food with biological danger.
Because the organism just cannot afford to be poisoned twice.
Exactly. The stakes are too high. So the brain undergoes this rapid involuntary adjustment. The next time that individual encounters the aroma of that seafood, they do not need to consciously deliberate about its safety.
Right? There's no should I eat this?
No, the body reacts automatically with a conditioned taste aversion. It just floods the system with nausea to ensure the person completely avoids the food.
It essentially functions like your brain installing an automatic emergency firewall against that specific restaurant or ingredient.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to consciously consult your memory banks. Your biology just violently handles the threat assessment for you.
Right.
It really makes you evaluate your own life and wonder what seemingly neutral things, maybe like a certain cologne or a specific song or even just the layout of a room, have become invisible and voluntary triggers for you simply because of a past association.
Oh, absolutely. And it is a highly adaptive defense mechanism.
Mm.
Classical conditioning evolved to help biological organisms survive peril in these unpredictable natural ecosystems outside the laboratory.
Right, in the real world.
Exactly. By rapidly internalizing these environmental predictive cues, organisms learn what to avoid instinctively. I mean, if a creature in the wild has to stop and cognitively process whether a brightly colored frog is poisonous,
It's already too late.
exactly, they're already dead. The physiological reaction must precede the conscious thought.
But survival isn't just about avoiding toxic stimuli, right? We aren't just these biological alarm systems reacting to danger all day.
No, thankfully.
Right? We have agency, we have goals, and we actively manipulate our surroundings to extract the things we want.
And the mechanisms do shift dramatically when we move from those involuntary reflexes to voluntary action. That is the domain of instrumental or operant conditioning.
Okay, so how does that differ from the classical stuff?
Well, while classical mechanisms govern our internal physiological adjustments to a predictive signal, instrumental conditioning focuses on the direct association an organism forms between its own voluntary skeletal actions and the environmental consequences that immediately follow.
So this is basically the architecture of choice. We are choosing to move our bodies to, like, type on a keyboard or to open a textbook because we anticipate a specific consequence.
What's fascinating here is how this shifts the focus entirely to those voluntary actions, illuminating a very mechanical rule.
Which is?
Behaviors followed by positive reinforcement are strengthened and repeated, whereas actions yielding negative consequences or punishments are naturally suppressed over time.
Right, the carrot and the stick.
Exactly.
Mhm.
B.F. Skinner, who pioneered much of this operant research, is quoted in the text stating, "The principal objective of psychology is to provide us with an entirely new understanding of the things we know best."
I love that quote. It suggests we think we completely understand the motives behind our daily choices, but operant conditioning exposes the hidden environmental levers actually dictating those choices.
Absolutely.
And we see those exact levers operating at scale in the academic journals from early 2026. Specifically looking at how universities are trying to basically modify the study habits of first-year undergraduate students.
Oh, yeah. The universities have implemented these targeted digital push notifications that leverage this exact operant architecture outside of a traditional lecture hall.
Yeah, the journals detail how these automated smartphone alerts are sent to both traditional and non-traditional adult learners immediately after they complete weekly online study modules.
Right.
The alerts instantly deliver these micro-credentials and digital badges directly to their screens. So the software itself is acting as an operant reinforcer,
Exactly. The student performs the voluntary skeletal action.
like completing the complex module.
Right. And immediately receives the positive environmental consequence, a shiny, socially verifiable digital badge. And the data shows this systematic application is highly successful at driving up metric engagement.
It's crazy how well it works.
It is a very clean application of instrumental reinforcement. The prompt delivery of the digital badge strengthens the neural pathway associated with the behavior of completing the module.
I do find myself questioning the philosophical depth of this kind of learning, though.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, I mean, if we are conditioning university students by pinging their phones with digital badges, it feels like we are treating them like laboratory animals pressing a lever for a food pellet.
That's a fair point.
Like, it strengthens the action of clicking through a module, sure, but it doesn't necessarily mean they are deeply engaged with the academic material or developing a genuine passion for the subject.
Well, the data actually supports your skepticism there.
Yeah.
Operant conditioning is entirely agnostic to philosophy or deep passion.
It doesn't care.
It doesn't care at all. The reinforcement simply strengthens the probability of the behavior being repeated. Whether that behavior is accompanied by a profound love for the subject matter is totally irrelevant to the associative mechanism.
Wow.
The environment is simply reinforcing the action of task completion.
But life is rarely that predictable, right? We build these associations either involuntarily through classical pairing or voluntarily through operant reinforcement. But environmental contingencies change all the time.
They do.
The app might glitch and stop sending badges, or the rules of the classroom might shift overnight. Our brains must have a mechanism for dealing with the sudden disruption in the reward structure.
They do, and the brain handles those disruptions through a mathematical phenomenon known as prediction error, which is the absolute core engine of associative learning.
Prediction error?
Yes. The brain is constantly functioning as a predictive model, basically trying to forecast what will happen next at all times.
So the learning only happens when the environment defies our internal forecast. The gap between what we predict and what actually happens forces the brain to update its model.
Right. That gap is the prediction error. When you first interact with a novel environment, your ability to forecast the outcome is incredibly poor.
Because you have no data yet.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Because reality does not match your expectation, the prediction error is massive.
Mhm.
And that large error acts as a powerful biological signal, demanding that your brain allocate resources to learn the new rules.
Okay, I see.
But as you undergo repeated trials and experience the same environmental feedback over and over, your conditioned stimulus increasingly accurately forecasts the outcome.
So this surprise factor just vanishes.
Right.
The brain maps the environment perfectly, so the prediction error drops to zero, and that active, resource-heavy learning phase settles into just an automatic habit.
But when that environment abruptly shifts, when a deeply ingrained behavior is repeatedly performed, but the anticipated reinforcer is suddenly withheld.
Like when you do the work and the reward vanishes, do you just unlearn the behavior?
Well, the structural bond between the action and the consequence begins to degrade. This cognitive friction triggers a process called extinction, where the frequency of the behavior sharply declines.
Okay.
However, the textbook highlights a crucial distinction here. Extinction suppresses the behavior. It does not erase the original memory trace.
So the association just goes dormant.
Exactly.
We know this because of spontaneous recovery, right? Where after a period of rest, the conditioned response suddenly flares back up. Or stimulus generalization, where a completely novel cue that just happens to mimic the original environment triggers the old habit. The underlying architecture is incredibly resilient.
It is. And Charles Darwin is heavily referenced in this section of the text for a reason. He observed, "It is not the strongest of the species that survives, but the one most responsive to change."
Wow.
Right. The organisms that survive are the ones whose cognitive models can rapidly calculate prediction errors and adjust their operant behaviors when the ecosystem shifts.
And the sources provide a remarkably painful example of what happens when that prediction error math breaks down in a modern setting.
Oh, the burnout study.
Yeah, the Spring 2026 educational report. It tracked these second-year college students who were suffering from severe, debilitating academic burnout.
It was a rough read.
It really was. These were students dedicating massive amounts of voluntary effort to their study groups, but they were being evaluated on high-stakes exams that fundamentally failed to align with the material they were told to master.
It creates a catastrophic mismatch between their instrumental effort and the environmental consequence.
Exactly. The students are forecasting a positive consequence, a passing grade for their voluntary study behavior. Instead, they encounter a massive negative prediction error. They receive punishing grades despite their effort.
And that breaks the system.
It totally breaks it. The report details how this prolonged lack of predictable rewards causes their academic motivation to undergo rapid extinction.
Right.
The cognitive friction becomes so intense that many of the non-traditional learners simply abandon their study groups and withdraw from the academic environment entirely.
It is a stark demonstration of operant principles overriding initial intentions. I mean, if the environment ceases to reward the behavior, or worse, begins punishing the effort unpredictably, the behavior will eventually undergo extinction.
Because the brain is just running the math.
Right. The brain's math calculates that the energy expenditure is no longer yielding a survival advantage.
It shows how vulnerable we are to the systems we operate within. I mean, up to this point, we've analyzed classical and operant conditioning as somewhat distinct mechanisms. But in a natural setting, outside the controlled vacuum of a laboratory, these two systems don't operate in isolation, do they?
Not at all.
They have to interlock.
They constantly intertwine to form a master blueprint that dictates our daily decision-making routines.
I'm thinking about commercial marketing campaigns right now.
Oh, that's a perfect example.
Right. The initial phase of a campaign is purely classical. A corporation pairs a completely neutral logo with high production, euphoria-inducing imagery.
Yep.
They repeat this pairing relentlessly until the logo itself independently elicits an involuntary internal craving in the consumer.
The classical association successfully hardwires the emotional desire. But, this is key, an internal craving does not generate revenue.
Right. Feeling good about a shoe doesn't buy the shoe.
Exactly. The physical action of purchasing the product is required.
So the classical setup triggers the operant action. The consumer voluntarily chooses to hand over their currency to obtain the physical product, which satisfies the craving.
Yes.
And the text notes this same interlocking mechanism drives clinical anxiety disorders, often with devastating efficiency. Like a neutral, harmless environment, like a specific subway station, becomes classically associated with a traumatic panic event.
Right, so the subway station itself becomes the conditioned stimulus, triggering profound dread. That is the involuntary classical pairing. To cope with that internal physiological alarm, the individual initiates an instrumental avoidance strategy. They will voluntarily alter their daily commute, maybe adding hours to their travel time, just actively steering clear of that location.
And they do that because they get a reward.
Exactly.
Right.
They perform this operant behavior to obtain a very specific reward: immediate anxiety reduction. Understanding how deeply these systems intertwine clarifies how powerful emotional phobias and compulsions are reinforced by our daily interactions with our spaces.
It's a huge insight.
The philosopher William James captured the agency we still possess within this matrix when he stated, "The greatest discovery of my generation is that a human being can alter his life by altering his attitudes."
Here's where it gets really interesting. If our behavior is shaped by these interlocking classical and operant loops, then the people designing our spaces can intentionally engineer the environment to shape positive, pro-social behavior.
Yes, the architecture of positive reinforcement.
Exactly. We see this in the news articles from June 2026 covering how college campuses are radically redesigning their physical student centers. They aren't just updating the decor, they are literally weaponizing the architecture.
They are systematically establishing new classical associations to alter operant outcomes.
Yeah, they took the academic advising and career planning offices, which are spaces that typically induce high anxiety for first-year and non-traditional students.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, and they integrated them directly into spaces featuring relaxing, ambient lighting, and positive social events.
It's so smart.
It really is. By repeatedly pairing the daunting task of career planning with calming, positive physical cues, they classically condition the students to feel comfortable in the space. The physiological anxiety is replaced by a conditioned sense of ease.
And the behavioral data reflects the success of that classical reprogramming. Because the environment no longer triggers an involuntary avoidance response, non-traditional working students are instrumentally, voluntarily visiting these centers at much higher rates to plan their academic futures.
They engineered the physical space to guarantee a positive operant outcome. But as we look at the final concept in our sources, there's a distinct limitation to everything we've analyzed so far.
Right.
Whether we are talking about contaminated seafood, digital push notifications, or ambient lighting in a student center, the associative math requires the individual learner to have direct, personal, physical experience with the reward or the punishment.
Which is a problem, because direct trial and error is biologically expensive and highly dangerous.
Yeah, if you make a mistake with a poisonous frog, you're done.
Exactly. If an organism has to personally experience every single failure to learn a new skill, its chances of survival are incredibly low. Fortunately, human beings possess a cognitive shortcut that drastically expands the boundaries of traditional behaviorism.
And that is?
Social learning theory.
Right. So we bypass the physical trial and error entirely by acquiring complex behavioral repertoires through observational learning. We can just watch an external model.
We can.
But it can't just be passive absorption, right? Like, I can't just watch someone play a piano and suddenly know how to play. There has to be a specific cognitive mechanism that allows the brain to map an observed action into a physical skill.
Yes. The cognitive framework requires the successful navigation of 4 distinct psychological bottlenecks. The first hurdle is focused attention.
Okay, that makes sense.
The observer cannot simply be in the presence of the model. Their brain must actively dedicate cognitive resources to the behavior while simultaneously filtering out all competing environmental distractions.
And if they successfully filter the noise, the next bottleneck has to be memory, right? Yes. Because you can focus intently on an expert welding a complex joint. But if your brain cannot organize and store an accurate mental representation of those movements into long-term memory, what the text calls cognitive retention, the skill basically just evaporates the second the demonstration ends.
Retention is crucial, but it leads directly into the third constraint, which is biological.
Yeah.
Motor reproduction.
Okay.
The observer must possess the baseline physical capability and latent motor skills required to execute the stored mental model.
Huh.
I mean, I could observe an Olympic gymnast perform a routine with perfect attention and flawless cognitive retention.
But you're not doing a backflip anytime soon.
Exactly. Because I completely lack the prerequisite physical strength and coordination, the observational learning fails at the point of physical execution.
The mental map is totally useless without the physical toolkit.
Right.
But even if a student has the focus, the memory, and the physical capability, they won't actually perform the action unless there's a compelling reason to do so. So the final bottleneck is motivation.
Without an anticipated reward, the mirrored behavior remains dormant. The presence of a high-value consequence is vital to activate the entire sequence. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it fundamentally changes how we view human cultural transmission.
In what way?
Well, Albert Bandura, the architect of this theory, noted, learning is bidirectional. We learn from the environment, and the environment learns and modifies thanks to our actions.
And we are seeing that bidirectional exchange rapidly accelerate among adult learners right now.
We really are.
The July 2026 National Study on Vocational Education focuses on second-year engineering students, specifically non-traditional learners returning to the workforce. And these individuals are mastering incredibly dangerous, complex technical fields entirely through online video demonstrations.
They are observing expert technicians execute the tasks on a screen, allowing them to navigate the attention to retention bottlenecks without risking the physical hazards of immediate hands-on practice.
It operates like downloading a software patch directly into the human nervous system.
Yes.
They watch the demonstration, filter the distractions, and lock in the mental model. And because they are already engineering students, they possess the baseline motor reproduction skills to handle the tools safely.
Right. They have the physical toolkit.
Exactly. But what makes it so hyper-efficient is the motivation. These adult learners are driven by the urgent need to secure competitive, high-paying jobs before graduation.
The stakes are incredibly high for them.
Yeah. That intense anticipation of a massive operant reward hyper-focuses their cognitive resources. It allows them to absorb the consequences of the expert's success without enduring a single physical failure themselves.
It is the pinnacle of associative efficiency. They are extracting the environmental rules of success purely through observation.
So if we synthesize the journey we've taken through these sources today, we began with the involuntary, hardwired nausea triggered by a bad seafood dinner.
A classic.
Right. We explored how the software architecture on our phones leverages digital badges to train our academic habits. We analyzed the catastrophic extinction of motivation when high-stakes exams defy our expectations, and how campus architects are using lighting to alleviate career anxiety.
Right.
And finally, we looked at how extreme motivation allows adult learners to bypass trial and error by observing screens. So what does this all mean?
That's the big question.
It reveals that every single space you step into, whether it is a physical room, a social dynamic, or a digital application, is silently, relentlessly teaching you how to behave. It is offering associations, calculating prediction errors, and presenting models for you to mirror.
This raises an important question regarding our own agency. When you audit your daily routines, you have to ask yourself, which of your habits, aversions, and desires were actively, consciously chosen by you, and which were simply installed by the physical and digital surroundings you routinely occupy?
It is a realization that fundamentally alters how you view your interactions with the world, and it leaves you with a really fascinating paradox to consider.
Oh, absolutely.
Now that you understand the exact biological and mathematical mechanics of how these apps and spaces are conditioning your behavior, does that conscious awareness actually break the spell?
That's a great thought.
Right. Or is the math of operant conditioning and prediction error so deeply hardwired into our evolutionary biology that even when we fully know we are being manipulated by a digital badge or a cleverly designed room, we still can't help but react exactly as the environment intends? Something to mull over the next time your smartphone buzzes with a new notification.